The beautiful readings today, especially Isaiah and the Gospel, perhaps could be compared to the way that parents feel at times. We hear of God's disappointment. Isaiah talks about God as a planter of a vineyard, and instead of producing lovely grapes, the vineyard only produces sour grapes. And the owner is disappointed. And the Gospel, in similar terms, talks about the disappointment of the tenants. Disappointment, rather, of the owner about the tenants, of how they fail to produce the goods they're expected to do so. Parents, I'm sure, feel like this. I hear stories of parents saying, we did our best, we gave our children all the best values, the best education and so on. And now one of our offspring, one of our children has made God his money. He works day and night, he's not married. Another parent might say, yes, we've done the same, and our daughter's married, but together with her husband doesn't believe in having children. We were hoping for grandkids, but we hardly ever see them. But we do get a postcard from the exotic places they're constantly visiting. And so on. There are lots of sort of examples of how parents bemoan and regret and are disappointed, if you like, in all that they've done for their children. The prophet Isaiah is, if you like, trying to compare God to a caring parent, you might say. In this case, an owner of a vineyard. The vineyard is God's people, Israel. So as the people listen to the story that Jesus tells, and he's speaking about the leaders, for he adds another element to this Isaiah story. It's not just the vineyard that's producing sour grapes. No, in this case, we don't know what the fruit is, but the tenants, the leaders, are the evil ones. And he's saying that about the chief priests and the elders of the people of his day. You might say some of the leaders of our present era, both in our church and in our communities, in our society, in our world, are not acting very differently. To our shame, or to least of mine, what some priests have done has brought discredit and a lack of credibility to our community. And when you think of what some of the world leaders are doing in various countries, you wonder whether they're on the path of destruction and trouble. They're certainly not acting like keystones. They're no longer Nelson Mandela's, who spent 27 years in prison, came out without a malicious thought in his head about his enemies, and instead united the country. What does this mean to us? Well, I think St. Paul has the answer where he says, despite the regrets we have as parents, as leaders, don't be filled with anxiety. Continue to turn to God. God knows all that we need and will indeed help us. But we need to remember and continually to ask ourselves, what sort of fruit are you and I producing? For each of us does have a leadership role. Even if we're kids, we might be an older brother or sister. And if we're parents or leaders of a team in our workplaces, or have some responsibility in our communities, we too are elders and chief priestess, if you like, and we're called to produce good fruit. And if we examine our lives carefully, we know at times that what we do produce is sour grapes. But let's not despair. Let's not fall into that dreadful state of despair, for God is still with us. He continually gives us another chance. Let us accept that chance and let us live our lives in the way that God wants.